Karen drained my rainwater tanks. Didn't know they fed the whole garden of veterans and kids. My name is Maya Bristow. I'm 34, a public school science teacher, and until recently, I was just the quiet woman with muddy boots and calloused hands who lived on the edge of Timber Hollow. I didn't talk much. I grew food, taught kids how to build worm bins, and said hello to dogs before people. And then Karen arrived. She moved in 2 months ago to Lot 8, just across from my fence line, wearing designer gardening gloves and zero humility. She waved the first day she arrived, but not in the neighborly way. It was the kind of wave that said, "I'm already planning how to control this street." I smiled back, polite, naive. If I'd known she'd eventually kill a garden that fed 60 people, including 3 veterans on disability, and a school lunch program, I'd have locked my water tanks behind a steel gate. But I didn't know. Not yet. I built the rainwater system myself 3 years ago. When Timber Hollow's drought warnings hit level red, it started with 2 300-gallon drums behind my shed, then expanded to a 2,000-gallon main tank after I received a small grant from a local sustainability nonprofit. That tank, tall, slate gray, with reinforced UV panels and a triple filtration line, was my baby. It collected every drop from my roof, filtered it, and funneled through to the plots on Maple Row Community Garden. The garden wasn't just mine, it was our town's lifeline. Back during the pandemic, the grocery store shut down for 10 days. That's when we realized we needed to grow our own food again, together. So I offered my land, half an acre behind my house, and the town pitched in. Raised beds, compost piles, native bee hotels, even a chicken coop we rotated with school volunteers. The rainwater system powered it all, and Karen said the tanks were ugly. The first incident came quietly. I came home one afternoon from the middle school to find a yellow paper stuck to my gate. It wasn't city code. It wasn't from the county. It was from something called the Timber Hollow Community Appearance Board, signed by Karen Whitmore, acting chair, notice of noncompliance. It read, "Unapproved structures visible from the street rainwater tanks. Please remove or relocate within 7 days to comply with community aesthetic guidelines." I blinked. There was no such board. I checked the town website. Nothing. Then I checked Facebook, and there it was, a shiny new page logo designed in Canva, full of fake authority. Karen had started a fake HOA. I called her that evening. She answered on the second ring. "Maya," she chirped, "did you get the notice?" "Yeah, I got it. Problem is, there's no ordinance against water tanks. Mine are legal. I even have a permit." She laughed lightly. "It's not about law. It's about harmony." "Harmony," I echoed. "Karen, those tanks feed the garden. That garden feeds half the block. I've had complaints," she said. "Several residents said they were distressed by the industrial appearance." I bit back a scream. "Then don't look over the fence." She didn't respond, just said, "You have 7 days. Click." I didn't take them down. Instead, I emailed the county, asked for verification, printed a copy of my water permit, and laminated it. I zip-tied it to the main tank like a shield. Karen didn't respond, not directly. She went after the garden. One morning, I found a hand-scrawled "closed until further notice" sign posted on the gate. Beneath it, a list of safety violations, none of which were true. No signature, just the HOA stamp she'd made up. When volunteers showed up, little kids and retirees, she waved at them from her porch like she was doing them a favor. One of the kids cried, "I filed a complaint with the sheriff's office." They shrugged. "It's civil, not criminal. Take it up with town mediation." I tried, but mediation took weeks, and then came the drought. 2 weeks into July, the taps went dry. A county-wide restriction on outdoor water was issued. Sprinklers off, no hoses, no washing driveways, except for us. Maple Row was exempt because of my tanks. We rationed smartly, drip lines, watered at night, no waste. But I knew Karen hated it. She had to watch our garden thrive while her front lawn died under restrictions. Her daisies wilted. Her bird bath grew algae. She started throwing buckets of bathwater on her begonias. I could see her muttering. And then she snapped. It happened on a Sunday. I was at church with my neighbor, Bernice, an 82-year-old retired nurse, who ran our compost pile when I got a text from Roland, one of the garden veterans. Something's wrong. Tanks are empty. The main line's hissing air. I sprinted home. What I saw still feels like a nightmare. All three tanks were open, valves twisted, drainage caps pulled. The ground below was wet, muddy, and useless. Karen stood near her fence, hose in hand. I stared at her. "You did this," she smiled. "Consider it compliance enforcement. You drained 2,000 gallons of collected water. That's illegal." "It's water theft," she replied. "You've been hoarding a resource that should be fairly distributed. I've simply leveled the playing field." I wanted to leap the fence. Bernice grabbed my wrist. Instead, I pulled out my phone and recorded her. Her smile faltered. "You wouldn't I am," I said, and I posted it. Right then, right there. The video spread like lightning in a dry forest. By sundown, it had over 18,000 views on the Timber Hollow Town Facebook page. By morning, every resident with a smartphone knew what Karen had done and that she did it with a smug smile and a hose in her hand. It wasn't just a viral moment. It was proof. Undeniable. Unfiltered. Her own words. "You've been hoarding a resource. I've simply leveled the playing field." People didn't hear justice in that. They heard control. The garden suffered immediately. Our soil dried. Entire rows of squash curled like old paper. The drip lines sputtered, then hissed. The water table was already low from drought. The tanks had been our lifeline. Now they were bone dry and coated in mud. I gathered the core volunteers, Roland, Bernice, Sasha, a single mom with twin toddlers, and Mr. Liu, our elderly beekeeper. We walked the beds together that Monday morning, trying not to cry in front of the kids who had planted them. One little boy named Omar touched a shriveled tomato vine and whispered, "Did it die because we did something wrong?" I crouched down beside him. "No, sweetheart. Someone else did something wrong." Karen, for her part, tried to spin it. She wrote a long post the next day titled, "Why I Protected the Neighborhood from Water Abuse." In it, she claimed that unauthorized water storage creates imbalances that threaten eco-equity, and that she was acting under the authority of the Timber Hollow Community Appearance Board. People weren't buying it. The mayor commented directly, "There is no such board recognized by the city. No one has the right to tamper with another citizen's legal water system. Period." Then came the comments, "You killed food for veterans and kids. That's not equity." Karen, she thinks she's Mother Nature with a badge. We never voted for her. Hope her begonias are worth the whole damn garden. Public opinion turned so fast it made my head spin. But it didn't fix the tanks. It didn't restore the water. And it didn't stop Karen. The next week, she doubled down. She filed a harassment complaint against me with the town mediator, said I was cyberbullying her by posting doctored video. Fortunately, the sheriff reviewed the footage and tossed the complaint out the same day. But Karen still had her supporters. A small group of like-minded residents began popping up on Nextdoor and in HOA-style meetings she hosted in her living room. They called themselves the Timber Hollow Stewardship Circle. No legal authority, no charter, just anger. They posted grainy pictures of my tanks, calling them ugly blights. They claimed the garden created a rodent risk and accused me of hoarding privilege. One even sent an anonymous letter to the school board demanding I be fired. I wasn't, but the pressure mounted. Then came the night of the break-in. Around 2:00 a.m., I woke to the sound of something metallic slamming against my back gate. I grabbed my flashlight and stormed out. Two teenagers in black hoodies were trying to unscrew the faucet line on my backup tank. They ran when I shouted. I couldn't catch them, but one left behind a clipboard. On it, a hand-drawn diagram of my water system. At the top, for HOA compliance use only, the sheriff opened a formal investigation. But the deeper I looked, the clearer it became Karen wasn't acting alone. She had built a shadow system of fake HOA enforced by intimidation, using neighborhood gossip, vague threats, and a handful of angry followers to bend people to her will. She didn't need legal standing. She had fear, until now, because after the tanks were drained and the town saw the fallout, something cracked. The families who once looked away when Karen sent courtesy notices started speaking up. I got letters handwritten, apologetic, offers to help. People showed up with jugs of store-bought water for the garden. Omar's mom baked me a pie. Roland fixed the broken gate. Still, we needed more than sympathy. We needed water. I remembered something Theo, the ex-fireman who helped me install the first tank, once told me: water's memory. Every drop remembers where it came from. That stuck with me. Not because I believed water had a soul, but because it reminded me that people, like water, can come back from damage. If we were going to save the garden and expose Karen fully, we'd need a tide. Something bigger than a few angry comments online. So I called the local news, not the big networks, just Channel 7, your neighborhood voice. The same crew who covered the farmer's market and the high school robotics team. I invited them to see the garden. I showed them the tanks, the dried beds, the rot where rows of lettuce had once flourished. I told them the story from the beginning. No filters, no edits. And when they asked for the footage of Karen draining the tanks, I gave it to them unblurred, uncut. They ran the story on Thursday evening. The headline: Fake HOA Leader Drains Garden That Fed. Dozens. I was leveling the playing field. The fallout was immediate. Karen's real estate clients dropped her. She was a part-time broker on the side. And once people realized she had no real community authority and had sabotaged a public garden, her reviews tanked. Literally. One read, "If she treats your home like she treats community property, don't even show her the door." She filed a cease and desist letter against the news station. They didn't budge. That weekend, something amazing happened. People came, not just to look, but to help. They brought barrels, water, bags of compost, hoses, kids, grandparents. Whole families I'd never met showed up to save the garden. Someone spray painted a new mural over the faded one. It read, "You can't starve kindness." And below it, "Water belongs to everyone who gives back." Karen watched from her porch. Her begonias were dead by then. Her hose had been repossessed when the city cited her for illegal runoff tampering. She tried to wave again, like it was all a misunderstanding. Nobody waved back. The community came alive in a way I'd never seen before. People who hadn't touched soil in years knelt beside Bernice and Sasha, hauling water in milk jugs and old soup pots. Retired mechanics repaired the irrigation system. Teenagers from the local tech club reprogrammed the solar pump Karen had accidentally unplugged weeks ago. Even the mayor dropped by. He didn't say much. I just rolled up his sleeves, handed out bottled water, and personally filled 4 buckets from the fire station's gray water tanks. It wasn't just damage control. It was an uprising. Karen tried to push back. She posted long, rambling rants on her HOA Facebook page, now renamed Karen for Timber Hollow Integrity. She accused me of organizing a smear campaign, claimed that I had manipulated footage, and suggested the garden had weaponized children to create emotional propaganda. People weren't buying it. Her follower count dropped by half, then by 2/3, then the page disappeared altogether. I thought that would be the end of it, but I underestimated just how far Karen was willing to go to regain control. The first clue came on a Tuesday morning when I opened my mailbox to find a folded letter with no envelope. It read, "Notice of neighborhood violation, pending foreclosure action. As per Timber Hollow Covenant Code 4.9b, unauthorized use of shared rainwater resources is considered a Tier 2 infraction. If this is not resolved within 14 days, enforcement actions may be taken. Signed, HOA Compliance Subcommittee, Chairwoman K. Whitmore." I laughed at first. Then I realized she was back to faking legal threats. Only this time, she'd stepped it up. She'd started forging legal language. I brought the letter to Officer Mendez, the same sheriff's deputy who responded when Karen drained the tanks. He sighed, rubbed his eyes, and said what I already suspected. This isn't just petty anymore. This is impersonation of municipal authority. That meant criminal charges. I should have felt satisfied. Instead, I felt exhausted. I looked out over the garden that afternoon, saw the sun-browned tops of our new lettuce sprouts, and knew I couldn't keep reacting forever. It was time to finish this. That night, I gathered the core crew, Bernice, Roland, Sasha, Theo, and a few new faces, a law student named Naomi, and our tech kid, Jared, who was working on compiling data from Karen's digital trail. We met in my garage, surrounded by buckets and hoses and jars of homemade pickles. I laid out the plan. We're filing a community protection suit. Naomi nodded. You have the right. She's impersonated public authority, violated property rights, and committed environmental sabotage. You have enough evidence for injunction and damages. Roland crossed his arms. Do we really want to drag it that far? Sasha answered for me. She drained water meant for children and elders. What if she decides next week the chicken coop offends her sensibilities and sets it on fire? Bernice didn't say a word. She just slid over a copy of a letter she'd received that morning. It was another fake violation, this time accusing her compost pile of toxic waste discharge. That was all we needed. We filed the lawsuit within the week. The town clerk, bless his tired soul, raised his eyebrows so high he looked like a cartoon when we submitted the folder. This is the fourth complaint filed against her in 60 days, he muttered, flipping through our evidence. Naomi smiled. It won't be a complaint this time. It'll be a court order. Karen was served publicly. The sheriff didn't even try to hide it. He walked right up to her porch with two folded packets, one for the suit, one for the criminal impersonation charge. I watched from across the street. She opened the door in a silk robe, her mascara half smudged, and tried to act surprised. But her voice cracked when she read the heading, Superior Court of Redwood County, Bristow v. Whitmore. She looked up, eyes blazing. You can't do this to me. I crossed the street, slowly, calmly, until I stood just outside the property line. You already did this to yourself. In the weeks that followed, Karen did everything she could to reclaim control. She hosted a neighborhood reconciliation meeting. No one came. She left a sign on her fence offering free HOA mediation sessions. It was torn down by the weekend, and then, like a balloon finally out of air, she stopped. No more posts, no more notices, no more fake boards, just silence. The court date came fast. Karen didn't have a real lawyer, just a friend of a friend who used to do real estate paperwork. Naomi, meanwhile, brought every receipt, recording, post, permit, and quote we'd gathered for 3 months. The judge didn't even need a full session. The ruling was clear, Miss Karen Whitmore is hereby prohibited from initiating or distributing any form of municipal or homeowner directive not expressly authorized by city governance. Furthermore, she shall compensate the Maple Row Community Garden for the value of lost water, labor, and crop revenue calculated at $14.81. Ms. Whitmore shall cease all engagement with water systems or property not explicitly belonging to her, or face arrest for civil contempt and environmental vandalism. Karen didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just turned pale, signed the papers, and walked out of the courtroom without looking back. That night, we held a celebration, not a party, not a victory lap, a planting. Dozens of us new neighbors, old volunteers, kids from the school, even 2 firefighters gathered under the stars and placed fresh seedlings into the ground. Row by row, leaf by leaf, iris bulbs, kale, snapdragons. The tanks weren't full yet, but they were half there, rebuilding, just like us. We hung a new sign on the gate. Power doesn't grow here. People do. 2 weeks after the court ruling, Karen put her house on the market. The listing went up under a different broker's name. No fanfare, no open house, just a quiet little note on Zillow. a modest price drop, and the promise of a peaceful community setting. I almost laughed at the irony. She'd spent months trying to shape Timber Hollow into her private monarchy, and now she couldn't leave fast enough. But she didn't disappear overnight. In fact, for a while, it was almost worse because she became a ghost. We'd see her standing at her window, arms crossed, watching the garden through a slit in her curtains. Once, Bernice waved. Karen didn't wave back. She started jogging early in the mornings. Not for exercise, I think, but because that was the only time no one would bother her. We'd find her footprints in the soft dirt by the fence. Sometimes the chicken coop door would be open when no one had touched it. She never did anything again, at least not directly. But we all felt her resentment like a storm cloud that hadn't finished raining. I could have hated her, but mostly, I pitied her. The garden, though it healed, the soil, rich from new compost and cover crops, began to turn dark and soft again. Our carrots returned. The squash that survived Karen's flood bloomed with quiet fury. The kids painted new plant markers in bright colors, sunbursts, stars, and bees with big cartoon smiles. We installed a new tank, twice the size of the last. This one had a coated lock. Theo welded it himself, then left a note taped to the side. You can't steal what's already been shared. The city finally stepped in with support. A week after the court ruling, the town council voted unanimously to allocate emergency funds for drought-resilient public gardens. We were the first recipient. That money didn't just fix pipes, it repaired trust. We brought in irrigation consultants, rebuilt the shed Karen had tried to label a visual violation, added a shaded seating area for seniors, and a solar-powered water testing monitor. A local artist painted a second mural, She Drained Us. We grew anyway. It became a hashtag. Kids posted selfies in front of it. Even a college group from the next town over came to see it and asked if they could help replicate the model. Our little garden was no longer just soil and vegetables. It was a symbol. Then one day, Karen was just gone. A neighbor saw her drive away at dawn. The moving truck came later, loaded with her curated lawn sculptures and a porch swing she'd never used. She left behind a cracked flower pot and a stack of unused courtesy violation forms in her recycling bin. No one took them. 3 days after she left, I found something unexpected in my mailbox. No envelope, just a folded sheet of pale blue paper. Maya, I was wrong. I told myself I was protecting something. But the truth is, I didn't know how to build anything real, only how to impose order. You built something that people believed in. I resented you for it. I don't expect forgiveness, but I do hope you'll keep the garden alive. Karen and I stared at it for a long time. Then I folded it gently and placed it in the garden's journal, the same one we kept records of rainfall, bloom cycles, and notes from kids who found worms in the compost. Not to erase her, but to remember that people can change if only in the final moments, when they finally see the truth. Months passed. The tanks filled again slowly, steadily. Rain returned. Tomatoes blossomed. One day, a man in a wrinkled denim shirt showed up at the gate. Said his name was Ezra, Karen's brother. I know what she did. He said, we weren't close, not for years. But she told me a little before she left. Said this place taught her something. He pulled out an envelope. It held a check. $20, $500 from Karen. Use it for seeds. If nothing else, I almost said no. But Roland stepped forward. Hand out. We'll take it, he said, for the garden, not for her legacy. Ezra nodded once, then left. That spring, something beautiful happened. A little girl named Ivy, 7 years old, with missing front teeth and freckles across her cheeks, planted a sunflower seed beside the tank. We didn't expect much, but it grew and grew. By midsummer, it towered over the fence line, golden and proud. We named it Justice, and we let it bloom as high as it wanted. The garden became more than a patch of soil after Karen left. It became a gathering place, a stage, a living, breathing monument to what community could look like when people chose care over control. Every Saturday, we held open hours anyone could stop by. plant something, harvest a few tomatoes, or just sit under the new shade trellis and breathe in the scent of mint and rosemary. The garden didn't belong to anyone now, which meant it belonged to everyone. We added raised beds for wheelchair access. Naomi, the law student who had helped with the court filings, returned with a grant proposal in hand. By summer, we had picnic tables, a compost tea brewer, and 2 solar panels that powered nighttime grow lights for our seed starts. People from other towns emailed me. Some called, "Can you help us start something like this?" What happens if someone like Karen shows up again? I always said the same thing. You don't stop them by yelling louder. You stop them by growing something bigger than them. I remember the day we dedicated the new sign. It wasn't grand, just a wooden arch, sanded smooth, carved by one of the local Eagle Scouts. At its top, in bold block letters, it read Maple Row Community Garden, watered by rain, rooted in respect. Below it, smaller letters, founded by Maya Bristow and the people of Timber Hollow. Someone suggested we put up a plaque with the full story about the tanks, the sabotage, the court case, Karen's name. I said no. Let the roots remember. Let the people teach. The garden didn't need her name to carry the weight of her choices. We held a community feast that fall, tables full of food, all grown right there: potatoes, collard greens, beets, strawberries, cabbage rolls, baked squash. Kids ran around with painted faces. Bernice brought honey from Mr. Lou's beehives. Even the mayor brought his famous peach cobbler. I stood near the tank, now painted bright green and covered in murals by the local elementary school. Ivy, the girl who planted that now 10-foot sunflower, tugged on my sleeve. "Miss Maya," she whispered, "is the garden safe now?" I knelt down beside her. "Yeah," I said, touching the sunflower stalk. "It's safe because we made it strong. Together, I still teach science at the middle school. But now, every student in my class visits the garden once a month. They measure pH levels, test rain catch data, log pollinator sightings. They learn that resilience isn't something you download, it's something you grow. And sometimes they ask about Karen. Some heard from older siblings. Others saw the video. One kid even said, "Didn't that lady try to make herself queen of the hoses or something?" I don't deny it, but I tell them the truth. She thought power came from rules. We showed her it comes from roots. One night in late autumn, I walked the beds alone. The wind was soft, rustling through collard leaves. Somewhere far off, a dog barked, then quieted. I stopped by the new tank and placed my hand on the metal, still warm from the sun. 2,000 gallons. A new design, overflow channels to the south field, night timers on the drip system. All of it rebuilt. All of it better than before. A faint memory crossed my mind, Karen. That first week she moved in, waving across the fence. I used to wonder what would have happened if I'd said more. Invited her in, tried to explain. Now I know it wouldn't have mattered, because Karen didn't need a garden. She needed control, and control doesn't bloom, but kindness does. What would you do if someone tried to control what your community built with love and labor? Would you fight back or grow something stronger in response? Share your thoughts below. Let's talk about justice, boundaries, and what it really means to belong.